example, a telecommunication authority can be transformed to a digital society authority. We see this implemented in Nigeria. That's why Ministry of Communication has been transformed to Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. Now to part 2 of our workshop series, to part 2. So amid the COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to the shutdown of many countries, an important and ongoing discussion is how to build a more robust and resilient global economy. In this respect, 2 policy questions will be addressed. And the policy questions are, number 1, how do we ensure that all stakeholder groups collaborate, prioritize, and invest in the needed digital infrastructure and skills to mitigate similar challenges in the future? The second question is, what strategies and policies needed to be in place or articulated and implemented to proactively prepare developing and least developed countries in the case of a similar occurrence, and how do we mitigate the adverse effect through a more resilient supply chain in a digital economy? Follow-up question also in that second part is, how can the developed and least developed country evolve digital cooperation initiatives that encompass Industry 4 technologies and related methods, such as smart manufacturing, Internet of Things, and environmental sustainability for the benefit of our citizens in the area of job creation and economic survivability? So we will go in 2 rounds of intervention, as I said, 2 to 3 minutes per speaker, so that after the rounds, we can have ample time for Q&A and general interaction. It's now my pleasure to invite Engineer Osam Elgama, the chairman of the Africa ICT Alliance and CEO ICANN, representing the private sector based in Egypt, to provide his opening remark and intervention. Engineer Osam, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jimson. It is the pleasure of all AFICTA board and members to organize this second session for with the IGF, and we are pleased to have all those distinguished speakers and participants with us. As all of you know, AFICTA has been established in 2012. And since then, with the main founder was Dr. Jimson Olivier, and now we have members from all over 30 countries from all over Africa, representing different business associations and SMEs and large companies. And it is really a very important subject that we are discussing today, where we really want to make sure that we are able to provide the best ecosystem and best practices to the DLPs to benefit from the internet. And what we have seen during COVID time showed how much access is very important for everyone to benefit from the use of ICT in different sectors: education, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, e-commerce. And it is certain that countries that were able to capitalize on the investments they have done in internet access and applications were able to deliver much better than countries that are still in need for this to happen. I think it is very important to have such session where we can discuss the real potential of bringing together all the efforts to have a better working environment, to have a better access, to have better policies enabling such access and such application, to have better investment coming into DLPs to provide such opportunity, especially that there is a big market where not just the citizen will benefit, the governments will benefit, but also businesses will benefit out of that. I wish all speakers all success in this session, and let us move forward. Thank you, Dr. James.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Access is so key and it's critical. Let me call on Melissa Sassi, Chief Penguin, IBM's Global Hub. Melissa.
So I think a lot of times we come to a variety of UN events or other industry events and we pontificate and we talk about policy. And we fail to make it real and talk about how lack of technology skills or lack of access to the internet impacts real people. I've recently pivoted a lot of my work to not just focus on, Melissa as the academic and researching and writing and understanding, to acting. And this year, one of the, I think, most exciting actions that I can think of that I personally have worked on with the Secretary of State from Cape Verde, and also saw some really nice social media shout outs from the Prime Minister of Cape Verde and the Vice Prime Minister, including the Secretary of State. And what we did is we created a National Day of Code. And we came together to bring young people in a collaboration between the private sector, between the nonprofit sector, academia, the startup ecosystem, and the entire public sector, as a call to action to say, come and figure out what this coding thing is all about. And we brought two famous musicians to come and code with us. And the whole concept was, come learn with us, come create with us, come change the world with us. And what we did is we taught these two musicians the introductory building blocks of learning to code. Okay, maybe they didn't create a mobile application, but what they did is they came in and they inspired young people to explore the concept that anyone can learn technology. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be an engineer or a data scientist, but anyone can come in and learn. I'm in active conversations in Mozambique. I'm in active conversations in other countries. I would like to use this as a call to action to say, Jimson, Hassam, and others, how can we create an international day of code? A national day of code in your countries. I work at IBM and I head up entrepreneur and student experience. And I'm here to say that IBM will be your partner and help to bring content, curriculum, speakers, a platform to help enable this, because I think that it's not just about how do we reform policy, but how do we bring the tech sector together with all stakeholders to truly make a difference and look at it and say, all right, when are we doing this? So Jimson and Hassam and others who are with me today, when are we doing this? Because I'm ready. If you give me a date, I'm ready to do a National Day of Code in every country across the planet.
Oh, fantastic. That is great. Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to take you up on that. Many people will take you up on that. Great. Let me turn to Dr. Kosi Amesno, Director, Ministry of Planning, Benin Republic. Dr. Kosi.
Thank you, Chairman. Environment is very complexified. Global governance become very complex. We know government have his system. Private sector have also another system. Civil society have another system. Governments are no longer able to answer that sustainable development in their country is something you can do alone. It's not possible. We know also that private sector every time needs sovereignty guarantee, something like power from government to get more and more money somewhere to build infrastructure. It's important every time for private sector to have government support to get many funds to make investment. When we look at civil society, there needs sometimes private or government support to have money to make their job for citizens. no longer really when we need individual donors who have sufficient resource to support them. They're not getting that every time. It's important for them sometimes to have subvention from government.
Okay, very good. So it's important.
The action, sensibility action, and so on.
Okay, so resources. Talking about resources, it's quite a challenge, and people need to collaborate and cooperate to raise needed resources to be able to implement important developmental projects. Thank you very much, Dr. Kosi. Now we know the internet was quite challenging there, but we could strive to get the message. Let me turn to Jane Coffin, Senior Advisor to your CEO. Jane, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all colleagues today. And I'm very pleased to be joining everyone here. What I'm going to focus on are three of the things, Jimson, that you had mentioned, and then sort of weave in something that Melissa mentioned. Flexible regulatory frameworks, taxation, inclusion, and real people. We've seen under COVID that connectivity, those of us that have been involved in it for a long time and trying to deploy networks for better socioeconomic development have seen that COVID is keeping us accountable for what we didn't get done. And it now gives us an opportunity to help connect people faster and faster. This means that we've got to take a look at these flexible regulatory frameworks and also add in innovation and a little bit of agility. That innovation and agility will help us loosen up licensing and make authorizations go faster. We've seen the need for speed when it comes to putting in fiber in certain cities right now, which is getting those authorizations and the rights of way and the trenching for fiber. It means getting the authorizations for spectrum allocation and Wi-Fi, maybe unlicensed, pitch for unlicensed spectrum. Also, the old ways of regulatory working from the telco era and now into the internet era, we need to have interconnection of small, medium and sized networks. We need financing for small, medium and sized networks, which means on the financing side, changing universal service funds. This has got to change because the old ways, the money's locked up, it's not getting out there to people. And it's people that we're seeing under COVID who need to work from home, children need to be educated from home, and we need to stay in touch with each other. Seeing all of you gives me hope. It's great to see you. I'd love to be there in person, but we need that social dynamic as well. So this is putting pressure on the regulatory entities and in governments to actually get more done. Taxation, putting strong taxes and customs duties on equipment to build that internet, to allow people better opportunity, only keeps it in jail a bit longer. We've seen equipment sit in customs warehouses for 3 to 4 months. Please, urging governments, this is no longer just a Ministry of Communications and regulatory body conversation. You've got to have a whole of ministry discussion with the Prime Minister, with the Ministry of Education, with the customs authorities, because you're now responsible for helping your countries move forward and get connected. Inclusion, bring in business, bring in civil society, bring in the technical community for consultation. We use the networks. We have people like Melissa who's setting up days of code. If you don't bring in these different perspectives, your innovation and agility might be impacted. So just to pitch again for more flexible and innovative regulatory frameworks, let's move. We've watched Ghana loosen up spectrum. We've seen the US loosen up spectrum. We've seen taxation come down on equipment. Do this to help speed up the deployment of your infrastructure and for the betterment of your people.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. The need for a kind of dynamic and pro-citizen regulatory framework, very flexible regulatory framework. Thank you so much for that. Now to Professor Kuleza Johanna, Professor of International Law. Johanna?
Thank you very much, Jimson. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Apart from being an academic, I'm also involved with ICANN, which is the platform where Jimson and I had the opportunity to first meet and start working together. I appreciate the opportunity to be here because working both as a policy activist, if you will, and as an academic, I see the silver lining of the pandemic that we've witnessed. And the silver lining is fundamentally that we can no longer argue there isn't a right to internet access, or that internet access is no longer a value. What the pandemic has done is it has emphasized that we do need cyberspace, we do need the connectivity. And I welcome the interventions from previous speakers who have emphasized how important connectivity is. Now, it is important when it comes to infrastructure, and I welcome the calls to provide reliable infrastructure and capacity building on the skills that are fundamental to keeping the network operational. I would like to put a balancing emphasis on end users, individuals, humans, if you will, of that equation. I believe that developing countries are in a unique position to prioritize the human, or as we like to call it within ICANN, the end user perspective of these discussions. I think it is a unique opportunity for us to look at the multi-stakeholder model that is unique for the internet, that is unique for cyberspace, and to quickly amend it to better meet our needs. Now, we can do it by approaching this challenge in a number of ways. The first initial one that I've referred to would be focusing on the individuals. Now, again, there is a body of work that focuses on the rights and obligations of individuals that is clearly something we can use. But I think that the pandemic has made us realize that we need to effectively break the silos. We've been talking about this for so long, and there are so many wonderful initiatives going on. I welcome this discussion we're having, because this is clearly a way for us to address that challenge. We need to work together on common goals. How do we do it? I welcome the call for a universal day of code. I think it's a very tangible, real initiative we could pursue. Let me put on the table, in the same basket, so to speak, an ITU initiative that focuses on balancing genders when it comes to the online activity. ITU has a wonderful program. It's called Equals. There is Girls in ICT Day that the ITU has been promoting for a while. Developing countries have been very active in that respect. So I would point to that as one of the initiatives to make sure that the internet that gets developed to where it still needs to be introduced, so to speak, is based on this fair balance of genders and interests. Another issue, and I welcome the reference in the first part of this workshop to capacity building. So another resource we might want to explore would be capacity building when it comes not just to developing the network, but making sure that it is secure. So just to give you a buzzword or a Twitter hashtag, if you will, that would be cybersecurity capacity building. Now, cybersecurity is quite broad. It is about maintaining the infrastructure secure. Now, this is where 5G comes in. The developing countries will be able to learn from the lessons of those who need to make difficult choices about 5G infrastructure now. Again, you could see it as a silver lining. There will already be a whole body of experience that comes with 5G and the equipment that will be purchased or introduced to provide for high-speed networks. Another element that falls into that is supporting platforms that coordinate regional capacity building efforts. If I was to point to a specific solution, I would call to form a platform that we've welcomed during this IGF here as well. That would be the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, an interesting endeavor that is focused on training those that develop cybersecurity policies. Again, deriving from experiences we already have in other areas of the world, but to make sure that developing countries do not need to force open doors, there is expertise to be used, and I'm happy to provide more details. There was a focused session on, for example, the Sybil portal. So I'm a strong believer in capacity building. I'm a strong believer in looking into end user interests and balancing those the best that we can. I believe in infrastructure, keeping it secure, but I also believe in the soft skills, so to speak, regional efforts that are coordinated. Thank you, James. I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to have a second round. And before we get to that second round, we'll take finish this first round. And we'd like to call on Dr. Issa Jalon for his intervention.
Thank you very much, Jameson. I'm happy to be part of this forum. My organization, I must say, is one that today is a success story in terms of land administration. It's a technology agency that we have worked over the years to build in terms of building a special data infrastructure for the FCT. And as we all know, Abuja is Africa's new city, which was created in way back 1976 as the capital of Nigeria now. And the government moved in 1991. And we started the computerization of the land records as well as the cadastre. Since Abuja is a well-planned city, we succeeded in building the necessary infrastructure that is needed to make Abuja a world-class city. However, that entire infrastructure had to be captured into our GIS record because you need the GIS to be able to manage the city itself. Now, because of this success story, all the states in the Federation right now have embraced GIS and are using the technology. Equally also, during the COVID-19, we had to change our technology, upgrade it from the desktop environment to web-based system. And this we did with our partners that are in Europe, in South Africa, and using the local staff that we have, we were able to do the upgrade successfully using the virtual platform. And this is being made possible because of the heavy investment of the 3G and 4G infrastructure that has been done in Abuja. So, and because of also the fiber connectivity that we have, we were able to do this upgrade. We did this from desktop to GIS because we need to collaborate with other departments and agencies of the FCT. And we realized with the COVID-19 that we cannot move physical files from one location to another. We had to avoid contact. So because of that, we had to also focus on building a web-based system, which we successfully did. And so the other departments were able to deliver information through the web-based system, and we had to also establish a connectivity via fiber because they are in different locations. And because of that, we became very efficient in terms of the services we are delivering. And we equally also had to start to provide some services online to our customers because we are the front end as far as services related to land administration. And this has also contributed in terms of the revenue that we collect from land administration. We've been able to sustain that revenue, which is also very critical for the day-to-day management of the city. And I must say that we are quite successful. We are second to the taxation agency in terms of revenue in the FCT. So we will bring into the coffers of government revenue in millions of dollars. So because we try to innovate and try as much as possible to use technology, we've been able to ensure that that revenue comes into the coffers of the federal government. Excellent. And we are hoping by January 1st, we are going to go full all our services online. And we had to also integrate our back-end services with the front end. However, there are certain services they have to come forward to be present to deliver. And we are also very critical with the current policy of the government on the digital economy. As we all know, GIS is a critical infrastructure when it comes to the digital economy. With this web-based application that we have deployed, we are trying to create an enabling environment for the private sector to have access to the information and also for developers to build applications that will enable delivery services take place, e-commerce services and so on, because this is very critical. You need to know the location of a house before you can deliver services. And because of that, we are also providing support to other states of the Federation to be able to build something similar. And we equally have invested heavily in our data center and we build capacity. And we're hoping to do even much more, God's willing, come 2019. We have learned a lot from COVID, and we are hoping to collaborate more, both within Nigeria and outside the country.
Beautiful.
And I must say, part of the success story, this is a clear indication of a North-South cooperation. With the technical support we got from Europe and America, and with my own team here, through the virtual environment, we successfully have been able to do upgrades and deployment. And this really developed the capacity of my staff, which at the moment they are providing first-line support because of the experience they acquire.
Excellent.
And this
Excellent.
is what we have done. Yes.
Yes, so this is a brilliant case study, and that's puts teeth to what we are talking about: collaboration within and without, and from south-south and north-south. Excellent. Maybe we'll still come back to you in this second round. So in the first round, I would like to call on Mark Tetiskel. Mark.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone once more. I think we had a very interesting panel last year, and I definitely want to bring back one specific point that I cited as very important and update everyone on that. So I mentioned that Brazil was undergoing an important revolution in banking. And this revolution has continued. We have seen a lot of progress in that sense. And to pick back up where I left last year, we had seen the big emergence of fintechs, so these financial tech companies that have been sort of changing the whole model for banks and bringing, banking, making banking more accessible, making banking easier, cheaper, faster. And this has really proven how having innovation can shake up a market and drive innovation in a meaningful way, because the old banks, the classic banks, have had to play catch up very seriously because they lose clients by the day, by the thousands, because those new offerings are just more fit for the deployment of cell phones around Brazil, which is massive. People want to be able to do things in an easy way that's fast and makes sense for them, and most of all, that doesn't cost them, the same exorbitant amount that traditional banks cost in Brazil, right? They operated much like a bit of a cartel, and when you have somebody who's bringing innovation in a responsible way, as has been happening, you just force the system to change along with you. And this is where I come back to this year. So this year we are moving towards a new digital payment system. So all operations will now be instantaneous. All operations will be able to be carried out at a national level without any hurdles. And I think that this is definitely a response from the central bank to this revolution. It is them trying to catch up to this many different methods that emerge from the internet to transfer money more easily, to transfer faster, and they feel like they need to catch up. So they set up their own digital system so that they're not left behind. That's good for everyone, because then we still get competition in the market, but to the people who are less inserted into technology, we bring the benefit to them as well. So we don't force people to enter new platforms. We don't force them to engage with any actor. We just, through technology and innovation, generate a change that's good for everyone. So that's pretty good. And now we're at a second stage where the pressure keeps building, and open banking platforms have been inserted as part of the discussion for the Federation of Banks in Brazil and for the financial market. And again, this is a demand that wouldn't be there if there wasn't this need for competition. This very important market building that people need to address. So right now we are looking, right now in November, the discussions are taking place. So open banking, for those who are not too familiar with it, basically the person is the owner of the data, not the bank. So your data belongs pretty much to you as an individual, instead of you having multiple accounts in banks and them having like varying data. So if you want your data taken down from a specific system, you can. It's pretty good, and it also forces bank to develop services that are similar. So we are really looking towards banking the unbanked, and this, I cannot understate the importance of this, right? uh, it's growing, it's becoming clearer and clearer, and COVID is proving this very much, how much we need everyone to be able to have some bank resource. And when I talk to my friends over in Africa, I know that there's that's still a big hurdle there. But here in Brazil, it is. But this pressure is forcing things forward a little bit, and it will be a great pleasure to see this kind of pressure applied there as well, to see this
That's
kind of
great.
change. So thank you very much, Jimson. Looking forward to discussing more.
Yeah, that's great. So there's need for competition. It drives innovation and new open platform. And I like the idea of the end users owning their data, like portability things in the telecom. That's great. Okay, so we've gotten to the end of the first round, and we had very interesting feedbacks. I don't know if there is any question. Perhaps let's just go to the second question immediately, then maybe we'll take any.
No questions yet, no questions yet.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mary. So what strategies and policies do we need to articulate or need to be articulated and implemented to proactively prepare developing and least developed countries in the case of a similar recurrence? We've heard about flexibility of regulation, but specifically, what area of regulation are we looking at? And how do we mitigate the adverse effect through a more resilient supply chain in the digital economy? Does it mean that we need to code that? You know, we need to do more coding? How can the developing and least developed country evolve digital cooperation initiatives that encompass Industry 4 technologies and related methods, such as smart manufacturing, Internet of Things, and environmental sustainability for the benefit of the citizen in the area of job creation and economic survival? So Dr. Issa Jalon will be also mentioning what are they doing to look into Internet of Things as they innovate. So let me call upon, in the similar order, let me call upon Melissa Sassi. Can we code ourselves out of the challenge?
Don't worry, I'm not going to mention the challenge again, but you're still on the hook for the challenge, and I'm looking for volunteers. So, you know, I think that the biggest, and by the way, my dog says hi. My dog is joining us today. She's
okay, doggy.
The world has changed since last time in Berlin. But I think that it's really important as we think about innovation, that we think about education and we think about practical skill building. And we think about the types of skills that young people are gaining access to. You know, for many of you who've heard me speak before, you know, my children live in Tunisia and they have sporadically been in school, sporadically. And they are impacted by school closures due to COVID. And they've been asking me, Mom, what can we do? What can we learn? I feel like we should learn something. I don't think I should be on TikTok every day. And I'm thankful that my kids come to me and ask me, Mom, what can I learn? What can I do? But how can we empower young people with real practical skills, whether that's informal or formal, and really think about young people at the center? And think about this concept of for youth, with youth, and by youth, especially on the continent of Africa, when you look at how many young people make up the population. And then if you look across all of our government entities across the planet, what is the number of the age or the number of years of experience, and what are we all doing to make sure that youth is at the center? One of the things that I really enjoy about Internet Society, for example, is their ambassador program that brings young people together to learn practical skills, to take those back into their communities. I, in my role, often have Atlas Fellows from an organization called Atlas Corps, run by Scott Beal. And, what they do is they identify, up and coming leaders to provide them with experience in working at companies like IBM or Microsoft or others. And the idea is they come and whether that's online or in person, and they spend a year to a year and a half learning practical skills and then taking those skills and bringing them back home, so that it's not just about how does Silicon Valley bring something to you, but how are young people in individual countries challenged with looking at what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Because ultimately, when we're talking about technology, it's about problem solving. Engineering or data science or a developer, it's all about how are you solving a big, wicked problem? And how are you doing that with technology? But if our young people don't have access to practical skills, it's very difficult for them to make real, true, meaningful use of the internet. And I'm talking about also injecting entrepreneurial spirit and critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, innovation, so that when we're talking about supply chain or fintech or health tech or insurtech, IoT, whatever it is, really putting youth at the center and thinking about what are those problems that they can solve and giving them opportunities and a real voice, a voice that can drive impact. And I think all of us collectively need to do a better job of really incorporating that concept of design thinking. How do we bring our audience? How do we bring all people to enable them to have a seat at the table? And again, do National Days of Code.
Okay, great. So you already have full support for that.
Good.
All
That
right.
was my goal for today, among many other things, but thank you.
Okay, great. Design thinking. Thank you very much. Dr. Kosi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. So what policy framework are you working on, to enhance your ability to be able to get funding, especially for those projects you talked about?
Yeah, get fund is important, but when we talk about strategy in SCT area, it's important to know that internet is not the problem of one country. In developing country, in poor country globally, when we are talking about strategy in digital areas, we are some dynamic who are going to make something for country. Is not better every time. It's not better every time. When we look at the Africa region, for example, we have one big strategy for all of Africa. African Union Commission put on the table with the experts we have on the continent, the African Digital Transformation Strategy for the period 2020-2030. That is very big thing, is where every African people, every African country, every African industry must put the hand and make their job quickly, taking in the way one road. We need to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030. It will be not good to have Africa outside the challenge. It's important for us to bring all the people to that strategy and work on that in each of our countries.
Okay, great. Yes, so what you are emphasizing is that we have strategies in place already, like the SDG, and so we just need to work at it. And then even the AU has the digital transformation for the Africa we want by 2063. So we should really pay more attention to that. Thank you for calling our attention to that, Kosi. Jane, over to you.
On the topic of strategies and policies, universal
Yeah.
service and funding has got to get better and more agile and be done not just at the high international financial institution level of billions and millions, but smaller amounts of money that small and medium-sized enterprises can digest and use for sustainability and get more money, but to show that they can move forward. So again, universal service and change in financing, licensing and more agility on licensing, and thinking about authorizations for technology and for development of networks, making it faster so that people can deploy networks more quickly. Spectrum, more innovative use of spectrum. There's shared use, secondary use, and direct allocations that can be made. We've got to move quickly to try and help get more agile and collaborative and cooperative and community-based networks out there as well. So a pitch for community networks. And if you're talking about supply chain, it's back to your point about clarity and information for businesses. How to do business, the ease of doing business, and just simple information so that businesses can get started and know what to do and where to go in government agencies. That's really important. Maybe a centralized website in government so that that supply chain isn't a question. And thank you, Melissa, for the shout out to the ambassadors. It's so important for us to have youth along with us to inform us, keep us agile, but also to learn more and to help us stay fresh. So I think that's something. And by the way, Melissa, I think we can support, we hope, I can't speak for the chapters, but we'll pass along the Day of Code idea, and perhaps you can work with some of our chapters too to get that done.
I would love that. I'm happy to coordinate that. You know, before we end, I'll share another opportunity for engagement as well. And I got some other exciting stuff.
Okay. Yeah, Jane, let me follow with you quickly. Sure. You know, talking about this infrastructure. I didn't hear you talk about security. What are you doing in terms of security? Because we have to have all this. And
we have lots of promotion. We've got a global coalition right now on encryption. So if others want to join us on promoting end-to-end encryption, this is highly important. I'm going to make a shout out to my colleague, Joseph Hall, who's the other senior vice president for our project work. Joe and the team have a coalition global that anyone could join on end-to-end encryption. We also have mutually agreed norms for routing security for the internet service providers out there, content delivery networks, and others. If you would like to join us in the Manners program, we would love to have you join us with certain principles based on secure routing. Secure routing is very important and essential for your country. So those are two things we could actively have you join.
So if you have a link, can you post it on the chat? If there's a link, or if there is none, you could let us know later.
Yes, sir. Right? I'll put it there now.
Okay. Yes, Professor Joanna, you know, I had the privilege of being at the UN working group, the CSTD working group. That is, CSTD is Commission for Science and Technology for Development, working group on enhanced cooperation on international public policy matters pertaining to the internet. And then we talk about, capacity, but this time around they focus more on capacity development, talking about capacity development in line with the Sustainable Development Goal. You know, so they use the term capacity development, so in line with development goal. So what do you think about that kind of phrasing? Instead of capacity building, we use building a lot, but say 2030, no, it's for developing countries actually, mostly. So can we, do you think it makes sense to really streamline that kind of transformative language among of your intervention? Please go ahead, Prof.
Thank you, Jimson. Yes, I believe that is a very relevant point indeed. I think there is a need to streamline those efforts to better meet the needs of developing countries. So I welcome that reference to the UN and the policies around it. Since we're speaking about cybersecurity, there clearly are current efforts both on the intergovernmental and the multi-stakeholder level that address the need to advance capacity building and norm development when it comes to cybersecurity. However, to be more specific, just to address the concerns you guys have been talking about, and I welcome all the suggestions and the feedback. When we're looking for targeted approaches addressing developing countries. I've mentioned the GFC. I'm going to do it again just because they are right now launching a call for research projects that focus on capacity building and cybersecurity. So that might be something you guys might be interested in. I'm happy to share details. Wearing the European hat during this panel, let me just highlight that there are big resources being put on the table by the European Commission, both on research and capacity building. Doing academia, I would be focused on the Horizon 2020 and the next research program that is just around the corner. So if there's need for funding in terms of capacity building, I believe that there are avenues to pursue, and developing countries would be the usual suspects to funnel that funding in terms of not just infrastructure, as already said, but also the so-called soft skills. So I'm going to stop here, but I'm happy to specify the details if this would be useful. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Johan. We would like to tap into that, definitely, the project for capacity development. We really look forward to that. So we'll follow you up on that. I'm sure the chairman is already grinning, and the deputy, they're also grinning that that is a good one. You know, they might chip in on that when they are making their summary. Next will be Dr. Issa Jalon. Dr. Issa Jalon, are you working on some specific policy? Is there a policy guiding what you are doing for sustainability? And are you do you plan to bring in Internet of Things to play with regard to your cadastral ecosystem?
Yeah, Jimson, I must say that there is already a policy on the digital economy that was developed by the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, and we are leveraging on that. Equally also, this new spatial data infrastructure that we are rolling out at the moment, which will go full blast in 2021, it has that interface that will accommodate data from Internet of Things. Already this year, we have started working with the Department of Road Traffic. We are doing a study to study the locations of all the traffic lights in the city. And we intend to deploy some sensors that will gather data on traffic, which is very critical. As you are aware, traffic management in the city is an issue. So we also intend to leverage on the 4G technology, the wireless technology that is available in the Abuja city, so that we can now pick up this data. And also using solar technology, most of the traffic lights are being powered by solar. And so we intend to gather this data and then deposit it in our warehouse. We already have subscribed to a cloud technology platform. We signed with Microsoft, so we are hoping that we are going to do that. And equally also, the CCTV is another area, security. Our infrastructure that we acquired right now will be able to accommodate deployment of CCTV on that infrastructure. It's web-based. We have our data center. And so it's just to develop the system and have an integration on the CCTV. We already have a pilot in our office. And there is also an existing deployment within our secretariat, which we intend to do as a pilot. Equally also, we have other areas that we are working in terms of, this is the environment also. We are also working with the environmental agency to be able to see how we can now work together to work on the issue of waste management, and also to be able to deploy environmental sensors that will monitor the environment in the entire FCT. And this is what we are doing in that direction. I'm also aware that the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, just recently, there was a council member at the Federal Executive Council that was discussed, and they are working towards establishing the digital identity. I'm sure, Mr. Gibson, you are aware of that. So this is something that is ongoing. Like I said, we are a key stakeholder. We are at the center of the development of the Abuja Smart City, in which the blueprint was earlier, some 2 years back, was developed by IBM. IBM provided the funding for that blueprint, in which my agency is at the center of the infrastructure for the smart city, and we are on course on that. Thank you.
Okay, great, great. I can see Melissa grinning there.
Yeah, I was getting jealous when he was talking about Microsoft, and I was wondering if he was going to start talking about IBM. So now I'm not jealous anymore.
So it's balanced now. And
Yes.
if I may leverage on what Issa said there, you know, no wonder outcome ICT is contributing more than 17% to Nigeria's GDP. It's like things are being done correctly in the sense, and there is a form of progress, which is commendable. But take note, there's a question. There's a question in the question room. So take note so that maybe you may take that up among others when we get to the next slide. Mark, tell me. So do we have every Brazilian covered with regard to banking? Do we have everybody covered with the technology?
So, Jimson, unfortunately, we don't. And the thing was, and this was what was scary, when the pandemic hit and an emergency payment was approved to keep people afloat somehow, then you have the situation in which the distribution is being done in agencies, in public agencies, and people have to crowd in the same space at the same time to receive the stimulus that's supposed to help them not be sick, right? It's the situation in which, when you look at it, you see how us from the developing world, we still have a lot of catching up to do in terms of how do we protect our own people in a situation like this? How do we make sure that we have a structure? We don't need to have the structure, the same as the developed countries. We don't. We can make our own way, right? I'm a big believer in that. But certain things, we need to be on par with them. And when I saw that, to me, that was the first sign of, okay, we have some things that are more prioritary than others, right? Because if you look at the situation of how everybody has been affected by this crisis, you will see that, of course, the developing world is the one that will end up suffering the most in the long run. There's no way of getting around that. And how do we compete, right? And when I think about that, I think about a lot about the work that we have been doing in terms of informing technology companies here in Brazil. My consultancy, we have been working a lot with the small and medium enterprises and trying our best to make them aware of what's going on in terms of the global technologies, right? So we try to bring this information in a way that makes sense and in a way that's not too technical as well, right? Often you will be talking to people who are entrepreneurs, who are not necessarily from the technology area, even though they do technology, which is interesting. So you have to find ways to make it interesting. So we're currently working a lot with IoT, right? That's the next big subject, I guess, in a lot of ways. And how do you explain that without making it A, boring, B, hard to understand? So we do a lot of videos, images, we make simulations, we take the devices themselves to show them to people, hey, I'm gonna click this one and it's gonna activate that one. I think that if we want everyone to catch up, we also need to sort of step down from our high horse. We're all people very involved in tech.
Yes.
We try to understand this, right? We really love this, but not everybody has to be as passionate as us, right? So
yes,
how do we make it nice for people to understand it? And maybe they don't need to love it as much as we do. Maybe they just need to, have a fraction of the love we have, so.
Yeah, that's usually the challenge. So we continue to make a lot of efforts to be able to bring in everybody to the benefit of the information age. Thank you so much. We've completed 2 rounds. And as we go into Q&A, Yeah, there
We
is
have
a
question already. There's a question from Ismaila Lamidi. Can you
yes.
see it? Moderator, can you see it? You can read it
Yeah,
out.
can you read it out, please?
Okay. This is from Ismaila Lamidi. He said, IoT is the future of technology, which I believe rely on digital identity. The question is, how do Africa and other underdeveloped countries handle the issue of lack of digital identity, which I believe is a common challenge to most African countries?
Yes,
And
it's a very,
he has had two supporters on that.
Okay, it's a very germane question, very good question, because without identity, you cannot really get much things done when it comes to e-commerce and when it comes to information society that we really want. So government, Dr. Issa, what are you doing about it? And Kosi, what are you doing? Issa.
Well, for me,
Hello.
it boils down to the issue of regulation, having the necessary framework that will now enforce that everybody should acquire the digital identity, and also to make the digital identity easy for people to acquire. This is very critical. And the issue of infrastructure was discussed earlier. If you don't have the necessary infrastructure to create an enabling environment for citizens to acquire the digital identity, it becomes a problem. Then the issue of security. Security is very, very critical. How do you create security around the digital identity? And also for people to be aware, because individuals are vulnerable. They can share their digital identity if they don't know how to make good use of it. This is my contribution.
Okay, very good, very good. So the issue of regulation, the issue of re-strategization. I think Nigerian government, especially the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, they realign, their work scope to bring in the National Identity Commission into their purview. And as we mentioned, there's a realignment to focus more on the digital identity instead of the card. So I think that is a new reorientation and direction, and we'll see the effect. Also, Kosi, what are you doing concerning that? Can you respond to the question as well?
Yes, digital identity is important. Every government in West Africa, for example, know that. We have one project with World Bank called WURI. For all our region in West Africa, World Bank help us to put in our country, in our different countries, the digital identity for people. They have some fund for that. The project are called WURI, W-U-R-I.
WURI, that is W-U-R-I, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's good. And it's very important, we mentioned something last year that is good for South to do peer review. They should take in the you are implementing such a project, it's good to check what your neighbors are doing, maybe Ghana, maybe Nigeria, or Brazil is also there. What are they doing? So it's good to ask around so that we do not make any mistake in implementation, and then learn from the experience of others. Let me bring in the chair of AFICTA with regard to government of Egypt. So how is the digital identity, how is it helping with regard to unlocking the development potential of Egypt?
Yes, Egypt has been working on digital identity, I think, since 2009. They issued a related law, and then there was 3 companies providing services for this. unfortunately, since then, and with all the what happens, what happened from 2011 till now, it did not pick up that much, except within the government itself. So we have digital signature, digital identity within the government. Still, for a normal citizen, they are still doing it under development and for specific goals. But it showed quite interesting, and I think that a year ago they started with a new program for financial inclusion, and with this program they are starting to enforce digital identity for everyone, so that we have a cashless transactions everywhere, which would minimize corruption and all of that, and would also increase and improve cash flow for different organizations. So this is for the digital identity. I just wanted to add, if I may, along with others regarding the capacity building, we talked just very little about Industry 4. Industry 4 technologies and solutions. And I think what we need currently is to have more and more national programs for transformational training, especially on the level of vocational training, because as jobs are shifting with the new technologies coming in, so people working in factories, people working in retail, people working in many industries will not have the same skill set required anymore. And this we need to prepare properly our countries. Otherwise, we will lose jobs. So we have to focus on transformational programs on national levels. We are starting a program here with the Ministry of Manpower on different governorates to help people start using SCADA systems, for example. Help people using cybersecurity for OT, for operating technologies. Help people using design solution, etc. It shows that it is more and more important to prepare them for this. It is not anymore the future. It is the current situation where we need to be ready for it. This is very, and I may add only one other point, is that we have it. We have a pain for it here in Egypt. We're working on it currently with the government. It is related to the valuation of R&D property, copyright. Unfortunately, while we are more and more encouraging people to go and make research and development, especially in technology side, because this is the future, it is not valued in the products. And this is clearly identified in manufacturing, etc., where when you just develop a new product, the costing of the product, they do not include, as per the law, they do not include the part of R&D into it, which is something that unfortunately is not helping moving more and more into innovation. So we need more policies that would encourage valuation of R&D and the copyright of it as well. Because where we are moving in the future, it is no longer only access and IT, but it is the merge of control, light current, IT, manufacturing, and all of that, and we need to be ready for it. Thank you.
Yes, you are very right. We really need to be ready. And in this regard, security is so important. I don't know if Segun is still there. Segun has been involved with the review of the Nigeria cybersecurity policy and strategy. So what do you see with respect to cybersecurity as we move forward in Industry 4?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Jimson. I'm quite happy that Professor Johanna made mention of the need to empower and develop cybersecurity in Africa. And one of the key things that Nigerian government has done, Nigerian government is looking at how to identify cybersecurity as a key sector. No longer, looking at that sector, no longer looking at that cybersecurity as just a countermeasure or just a palliative measures. But right now, there are policy measures now, which has been mainstreamed into the national policy on cybersecurity for 2020. Now, what it means is that Nigeria is now going to recognize cybersecurity as a sector, and then that will be a regulatory framework that will ginger the private sector to move into the private, into innovations, and at the same time to invest in various aspects of that area. Another thing which I will probably share is that Nigeria, the country has also developed some capability really in the areas of computer emergency response team. What we are doing now is to enhance what has already been done, is to take it from where we started from and build another vision so as to strengthen what we are, what we have on ground. But let me quickly make mention of something on digital skills. I think right now, stakeholders in Nigeria are looking at how to mainstream digital skills for youth, especially in the context of the COVID-19 and the youth issues in the country. I think it is essential for us now to start beginning to look at how cybersecurity, how digital skill can be built into the mainstream among the youth, and then we can begin to build the necessary foundation that is needed for us to empower our country. Thank you.
Okay, so you mean in the school curriculum, right?
Yeah, from the school, apart from the school sector, I'm aware that the country has mainstreamed a policy in which before anyone can be employed in federal civil service, the person must have a minimum digital skills, which has been mainstreamed into the national digital policy requirement. Not only that, even among the teacher training, before you can become a teacher in Nigeria, I'm aware that the National Teacher Union now has embedded a policy in which every teacher now has to pass through some level of digital skill. We're not talking about computer awareness here, no. We're talking about the skill that is necessary for the teacher to be able to engage properly and also do their work within the teacher economy that is being unfolding. So I think across the federal sector, we have that going on.
Okay, very good. And while Thabo will be speaking shortly, I would like to note indeed that the Nigerian government has evolved an e-government master plan. And with that e-government master plan, I think there is an echo somewhere. Can we mute our line? So the e-government master plan, and with the e-government master plan, they're trying to bring on board a number of their government to citizen services. Olubile, can you mute your line, please? Yeah, there's echo coming from your line.
It's muted, sir. It's muted.
Okay, so apart from the e-government master plan, there are a number of executive orders that has mandated all ministries, departments, and agencies to automate and to bring on board onto the internet their services, so that government citizens do not need to travel far to use government services. So I think this is ongoing, and we believe that it will be perfectly implemented, as the Honorable Minister is doing a good job thus far, along with his team. So Thabo, I see like in South Africa, with regard to supply chain, the COVID issue, and then supply chain with inflation and what have you. So how do we tackle this issue going forward? What are your recommendations based on the experiences thus far?
Thank you, Doctor. Thanks for that. Maybe if I can start with regards especially to the COVID-19 itself, what it has presented us, it's actually a crisis that fortunately we did not let to go to waste. From the perspective that it actually gave a lot of different stakeholders with different interests a common why. So you see that a lot of people who usually wouldn't necessarily come together and actually work together without any financial interests, and so they actually came together. You saw that happening a lot in this era, and I think what ought to happen is that now we become deliberate in trying to define this why, to define this goal that is compelling for us to be able to adopt the digital initiatives and for us to be able to work together. So in South Africa, what we also have realized, we saw lots of changes that have happened. So it's changes from the education front. I heard Melissa speaking about the disruption in the education. So there was lots of disruptions that happened, and we saw schools trying to respond in a myriad of ways, and the government itself also trying to weigh in on the problem. Since we've got a challenge with internet connectivity and data not being as an affordable thing, and as well as devices, not necessarily everyone having access to devices. While other schools, like private schools, they've gone that direction of using platforms such as Teams, using Google Classroom and Zoom and all that. Government tried to implement it on using the television and network itself. So it was not now a direct one-to-one type of an approach, but however, they were trying to bridge this gap. They even brought in some celebrities that kids are used to. I heard somebody speaking about some musicians being invited. So it's almost the same thinking that was put there for teenagers and the small kids to be excited to start watching these programs, which were trying to push education to move a little bit forward. I think that those were the things that were done. And what we also saw was telcos. Telcos weighed in as well, but it was like the Vodacoms of the world. They weighed in on trying to assist with this. And the good thing with sometimes having a good strategy, like this telco that I'm highlighting, they had started this initiative long before we got COVID, where they have a platform for school kids, and school kids can actually learn. And when they go into that platform, it's a free platform to go into, and it assists. We saw from a supply chain perspective, we saw a lot of innovations, and our grocery stores moving into the digital space by for the first time offering grocery deliveries and their stores online.
That's giving us a new opportunities to develop new frontier of supplies and delivery system. Thank you so much, wonderful speakers and panelists. There's a question right there. We have 7 more minutes. So apart from this question, is there any other person there that want to have a comment, or so that we can take it at the same time? Okay, let's take this question. IoT, how can we determine costs for developing and least developed countries that are trying to be there in terms of infrastructure? Say, how can we determine the costs? Okay, so for infrastructure and security.
Mark would like to answer that question. Mark will.
Okay, Mark.
We let that question for the private sector.
Mark would like
Yes.
to answer the question.
Okay, Mark, go ahead, please.
I will get started, and then my co-panelists can complement. So
I just have a light cut here, so part
Oh
of
my.
the challenge here.
Hope you stay online, Jimson. We're
Yes, I
fingers
see
crossed
some.
here.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So, where exactly infrastructure, right? That's the problem, isn't
Yes,
it?
we just seen it
So,
now.
IoT has a lot of potential, but it also has a lot of problems. So we are currently doing, as part of our study, how can the home user get into this market? Yes, because it's not only about the big players. It's also about how people will internalize this and learn to deal with these technologies. And I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is establish good private sector government conversation about this, and it's often hard. It's often very hard. There is a steep wall there to be overcome because governments only look at this either from the profit or the cybersecurity angle. It's an either or proposition, and sometimes what you're trying to say is, no, we need this for other things. We need this to speed up processes. We need this to reach different markets and different services. So the first thing I would say is, without good communication between the private sector and governments, we cannot advance this. And I see that happening. I see sometimes private sector just trying to run over the government in this case. But I think in this particular subject, this is not one where we'll be successful like that. So these are my initial thoughts.
Okay, great. And to promote the bidding process should be open and transparent, and then there should be a special incentive even for local content and local players. So those things could help with the pricing. Okay, and also using the universal service funding.
Do you mind if I make a quick comment before we move on the data protection, privacy, and security
We
thing?
have 4 minutes. We have 4 more minutes. Okay, yes, Melissa.
Okay, cool. I think that it's also really important when we talk about data protection, privacy, and security that we're empowering startups with the latest technologies. And I think this is where, it's a combination of the startup ecosystem. Again, it goes back to skills and also big tech. As companies are moving to the cloud and they've got sensitive data being stored in the cloud, what are they doing to protect that data, whether it's at rest, in flight, what have you? I run a startup accelerator at IBM that's all about data protection, privacy, and security. And I think that there needs to be more of a concerted effort around what are startups doing to invest in the latest and greatest, and how can tech companies give startups cloud credits to enable them to essentially manage some of the costs and activities that they may not be able, to fund. I mean, I know we do that, from an IBM perspective, and obviously that happens with, other companies across the tech sector. But again, I think it's really important that we think about the role that startups play, and not only how are they innovating, but how are they keeping our sensitive data secure, whether that's IoT, healthcare, fintech, insurtech, whatever.
Excellent. And I see Nigerian government agency doing a lot to support startup, but they can always do much more. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, so
we still have some questions.
We have some questions.
There's a question there from Joseph. Can we take it?
Okay, for Joseph, maybe I could just do that because we have just 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes. So how do we solve infrastructure challenges faced in Africa, which is critical for the digital skill? We also need to have R&D to solve Africa's digital skill gap, as we tend to import Western solutions to solve Africa's challenges. Well, how do we solve infrastructure challenges? It's been mentioned, the use of USPS funding, collaboration, and then we need to focus more on local content. Well, it's a global economy, so there is need for interaction, interdependence, and so, but we need to focus more on local content so that we can develop local capacity and then build the local industry. Is very important. Local industry, local manufacturing is also very, very important. So on this note, I want to say thank you to so many people that have helped with this workshop. I want to thank the IGF Secretariat, Shengetai and Aya. I want to thank my co-moderator. Thank you, Mary Uduma. Thank you, the chair of AFICTA and the vice chair, Rosam and Tabo. And thanks to Melissa Sassi, thanks to Kosi, Mesno, Jane, Coffin, Professor Yana. Thank you, Dr. Issa Jalon, Mark. Thank you. And thank you to our host, Akimbo. Thank you so much. You made it to be flawless. And I also want to say thank you to Alexia Sposini. Thank you, our host, Alexia. And our captioner, thank you, Brandy Kent. Thank you. And to all our viewers and those that ask questions, Ulugbile, thank you for being there and for rapporteuring. And I hope I've not missed out anybody.
Dr.
Yes.
Kosi.
Yes, mention
Indeed.
Kayode and Dada of the AFICTA Secretariat. So
over 21 attendees.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think we, from my notes, we say 42. I have 42 noted there with everybody. So thank you so much. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in 2021. Keep well, keep safe, and keep compliant with regard to COVID protocol. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please take out time to
Thank you all. Be well.
We'll be posting the feedback form once again. Please fill it. Thank you.
Okay, please don't forget to fill the feedback form.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.